not being reflected in Hillcrest rating on school report card, thus my excitement that growth was also going to be a factor now, and we've surpassed expected growth year after year. She hoped that any student in District 228 will begin to receive the best educational possible. I take issue with the word began. I say that began many, many years ago. For the past few years, Hillcrest valedictorians have had the highest GPA out of all 4 schools. She stated that our school boards in elementary and high school need to get together and figure out where the breakdown occurs in education. Perhaps she's unaware that District 228 started collaborating with our feeder districts in the late 90s in an attempt to close the gap that existed in some feeder districts. That this collaboration has occurred on a monthly basis for the past 9 years. We actually started to look at ways to assist our student years before ISB even recommended it. Many of their students are dealing with the same issues we face, the mobility of our students, the fact that the number of low-income students has increased 18% in recent years, parents that aren't involved, and many more. I'm going to repeat a phrase my mother often said to me: don't complain about the cleanliness of someone else's house until after you've cleaned your own. Thanks for staying with me for that. I'll move on. I took an insult to a member of the family and couldn't address it over the phone last month. The Board of Trustees of Schools met on October 2nd, and again, it's important to note that the investments handled through the Treasurer's Office, even though the average maturity is oftentimes 6 months to a year, we're outperforming the 3-year Treasury bonds. And our Treasurer has been asked to sit on an advisory committee to assist the implementation of the new requirements requiring financial reporting of all school districts, which is hoping to maximize the opportunities for greater equity. The group is building a multi-year implementation plan, guidance, and training to support schools in this transition to school-level financial reporting. I'm going to extend a thanks to all schools for successful homecomings. Apologize to those schools I missed for my daughter's surgery. I think that was the first Hillcrest bonfire I've missed in years. I want to commend Bremen for their participation. Their attendance at both Spirit Night and Powder Puff was awesome. I think they had more people in their stands for the Powder Puff game than they have at the recent football games. Many staff members and community members were there as well. And I met a particularly young man that was so excited to participate in the parade with a car he had refurbished. And he was happy that he had his career and his future all lined out with experiences that he had gained at the school. I also want to thank Midlothian first responders for stepping us and helping us at our schools with security as well as ambulance service. I attended several football games, was impressed with gameplay and sportsmanship. We were joking at the Tinley game. My husband and I recently watched Michigan versus Michigan State, and there was a tackle that, guy didn't even make any effort. And same situation at Tinley. A Tinley player dove and made the tackle. And it's like, see, that kid's college ready. It's also good to see the bands being a little bit more involved this year. I want to commend Hillcrest football coaches. I don't know if this happens at all schools, but happened to swing by the school after school and after practice was over, and a couple of students were still out there performing some exercise tasks. They're being penalized for not getting good enough grades. So that takes buy-in from the coaches stay later and the parents also to allow their kids to stay later and know that he has these consequences. So I really appreciate that. I want to commend Tinley Park for trying a new approach to get parents to come to parent-teacher conferences. They made video invitations to target parents of struggling students who had not signed up. The thought behind this was to put a friendly face behind the invitation and encourage parents to attend. One teacher even worked with the Spanish teacher to translate her message to reach out to Spanish-speaking parents. And I'm told that some parents that otherwise would not have attended did attend. Some schools had more participation than others. There's still a lot of parents that aren't attending. I talked to one teacher who said the whole time she saw 7 parents, and all those kids had averages above 90. So we have to be missing something or not doing something to reach these parents, make it easier for them something. So I'd like us to really look at that. Are we sending school messages out? Somewhere we can make it better, I don't know. It's also happy to see all the things the schools tied in with conferences. I think Bremen had a college and career fair, FAFSA presentation. I think Hillcrest as well had an NCAA presentation. I also got to partake in an appetizer competition they held in the building. Any parent, student I talked to were more than happy with the school. The only complaints I received were about temperature control and stench in the locker rooms. I did speak to a young lady that graduates in December. She's hoping to become a carpenter. I asked her what that would entail, what her next step was going to be, and she said, I have no idea. I asked if she talked to someone, she said she had, but no one can really help her, no one in counseling or college and career center. I know that the district's putting more effort into those students wishing to pursue a trade. However, I don't feel we're doing the best we could. We have people attempting to help, but with everyday other responsibilities, they don't have the time. I don't think our goal is being related to the staff properly. No one knows what everyone else is doing, whose job is it, what the plan is. We want to increase awareness of our programs to our feeder schools so that 8th graders can make appropriate choices, and helping kids decide areas of interest, explore them, to expose them to different options. I just don't know how that's coming about. Everybody loves the new fields. I've had many complimentary conversations with people regarding them. It's great to hear the enthusiasm. I spoke to a group of Bremen students that's looking forward to organizing a flag football intramural team and getting on that field. Their parents didn't allow them to play regular football, so they felt they'd want that experience of being on that field. I also hope that the athletic directors have more of a direct voice in the field house construction to avoid problems that I believe could have been avoided if they were involved in the fields. We have new tennis courts at Oak Forest that don't have access to all the courts. The way they were constructed is a coaching nightmare. When a parent brought this to my attention, I was embarrassed. We have to live with these things for a long time, the buildings potentially forever. We want to do whatever we can to ensure they are as perfect they can be. I keep thinking, what if that one more person had looked at Hillcrest when the plans were in the make and said, do we really need all these exterior doors? The ADs are the experts with athletics, and I think to not include them is a huge mistake. I was also recently made aware that we don't have proper equipment for field maintenance. I would like to think one of them would have caught that. I've had many requests from the public to get something up regarding the construction of the field houses. People are just inquisitive of drawing some kind of representation. I hope that's coming soon. Everyone knows the project is subject to change. We had a staff member interested in obtaining speed, strength, and conditioning certification in hopes that they could offer this to our athletes. This is something many high school athletes take advantage of, private lessons, but it's impossible for many of our low-income students, and I'd like to follow up on that. I attended a coffee hosted by Tinley recently for members of the community at Cavallini's. It was a small group, but those attended were appreciative and look forward to future events, which reminded me we had planned on doing something at the district level, and I don't know that anything's scheduled yet. I also got a comment from a Shepherd parent from the Hillcrest Shepherd game that said they've never had such an experience at a high school football game, and they felt like they were at a historically black college. The atmosphere and all the kids participating, the band, the drill team, they were just amazing. Couldn't stop talking enough about it. They said they were sorry their kid couldn't attend Hillcrest. That was good to hear. Hillcrest used to have a step team several years ago. They were very successful. It was very fun for the kids. Haven't been able to have one in recent years for lack of a coach, so I'm just putting it out there. Anybody interested in that, give Renee a call. That's all I have.
Can I piggyback on something that you mentioned real quick? I too agree that the athletic directors need to have their input on these buildings, these field houses. You know, obviously they're not, in construction, and that's not their forte, but what is their forte is athletics, and, they can maybe head off a possible mistake or, something that works for their building or their school that might, that the designer might not see, So I hope and I wish that they are involved in that. I think it's very important. And I don't even know if they're not. I mean, you brought it up, but I would definitely, as a board member, would love to see their input taken seriously.
Okay, new business attorney. Oh, I'm sorry. We have finance. That one.
October bills and interest funds and deposits. The Finance Committee reviewed and discussed October bills, interest, and expenditures deposits. These items have been reviewed with the superintendent, who, along with the Finance Committee, is recommending full board approval of the October bills as presented. Over $5,000 purchase orders, none. Career Development System, CDS bills. The Finance Committee reviewed and discussed the CDS October bills totaling $11,189.46. The superintendent, along with the Finance Committee, is recommending full board approval of the CDS October bills as presented. Network audit. Excuse me. The Finance Committee discussed the district's need for a network audit. Mr. Boswell presented the administration's recommendations to engage MindSight, a technology consulting firm, to audit and assess our computer network operations and compare them to best practices. MindSight engineers audit our internal computer network, wireless network, and servers. They also interview our technology team. Then they make recommendations and assist with implementation. The cost of the audit is $16,000, which is a 50% discount from the standard fixed price of $32,000. The superintendent, along with the Finance Committee, is recommending full board approval of the network audit as presented. QSCB Phase 2 capital projects. Dr. Kittle presented information regarding Phase 2 of the district's capital plan. He reminded the committee that Phase 2 project information was provided at the September 12th Committee of the Whole meeting, including the construction of all ancillary spaces as well as the field houses at all 4 schools. The project will be bid in multiple phases, and all bids will be subject to board approval. Announcements. The next meeting will be Monday, November 13th, 7:00 p.m. at the Administration Center. Adjournment, the meeting adjourned at 7:35 p.m.
Thank you.
Item 10.1 pertains to the October bills, addendum to bills, payroll, and CDS bills. The superintendent, along with the Finance Committee, is recommending these for full board approval.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Ressler, second by Mr. Johnson. Any discussion? No discussion.
It was nice for the savings, 16,000 or whatever it was. It's a good job.
Mrs. Ressler?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Canning?
Aye.
Mrs. Jones?
Aye.
Mrs. Camworth? Aye. Ms. Stearns?
Aye.
Item 10.2 pertains to the Illinois Association of School Boards Conference. The superintendent is asking for full board approval for the District 228 Board and Administration to attend the conference in November 2017.
Second.
By Ms. Ressler, second by Mr. Johnson. Any discussion?
It's moved by
Ms. Jones?
Oh, Ms. Jones, sorry. No discussion.
Mrs. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Canning?
You know, I cannot attend this board conference this year, so I'm going to abstain from the vote.
Mrs. Camworth? Aye. Mrs. Ressler?
Aye.
Ms. Stearns?
Aye.
Item 10.3 pertains to the district's engagement for a network audit. The Finance Committee has reviewed and discussed the engagement with MindSight to conduct a network audit of the district computer network. The cost of this audit is a significantly reduced $16,000. The Finance Committee, along with the superintendent, is recommending full board approval of this audit.
So moved. Second.
By Ms. Ressler, second by Ms. Jones. Any discussion?
Nice job.
Thanks for all the work that you've been working on the network. I know it's important to the students and staff that we have adequate running their systems.
Mrs. Ressler?
Aye.
Mrs. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Canning?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Camworth? Aye. Ms. Stearns?
Aye.
Item 10.4 is the QSCB Phase 2 capital projects. You can see on the bookshelves over there, there's some renderings of what the Phase 2 will look like. Take a look at those. We spoke about these at the committee of the whole meeting. We're going to go out to bid sometime in November, December. We'll be doing that in phases. So now I'm asking for full board approval to move forward with the capital improvement projects for phase 2.
So moved.
Second. By Mr. Johnson, second by Ms. Jones. Any discussion?
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions, Dr. Kendall. Just wondering if we could get these renderings, which are awesome, by the way, out front of the people.
They will be available.
Are they? Okay, like basketball games at the door or the remaining football games?
Yep.
That'd be awesome.
Yep.
Okay. And then one quick question, and I don't want to go too far into this because I know we did have discussion on it before, but I just want to hear it again, I guess. These buildings, we talked about the buildings being the field houses. We talked about them being able to facilitate an indoor track, correct?
Yes.
Okay, with the indoor track, is it going to be up to IHSA standards so we can host indoor track meets and events?
We can host indoor meets, yes, we set up for that. There's not a standard size, it's not the same size as the
Okay.
outdoor, but we'll be able to hold that.
Awesome, that's great, thank you.
I too was just going to reiterate about a lot of requests from the community to have these renderings out there even closer. I know it's on the street like as you're turning into the school, but everybody's trying to drive in and turn and really not able to look at it. So as they're coming into the football games and things like that, I was kind of like, what's going on back here? So might be a better place too, somewhere where we're having a lot of foot traffic as opposed to vehicle traffic.
Yeah, and by the way, those look awesome too. So,
Yes. Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Canning?
Aye.
Mrs. Camworth, aye. Mrs. Ressler? Aye. Ms. Stearns?
Aye. Before I do personnel, I'd like to request 10.5.3.7 be removed for separate vote.
Was it 10.537?
Yeah. I moved it.
Second.
Right.
Okay, so as separate, and then you want a separate vote for the approval?
So our first thing is a vote on the removal of it for separate vote, and I made it move on and seconded.
All right, you're ready to vote. All right, Ms. Stearns?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Canning?
Aye.
Mrs. Jones?
Aye.
Mrs. Camworth, aye. Mrs. Ressler?
Aye.
Under personnel, for leaves, Jennifer Greenway. Under resignation, Sarah O'Brien, David Sellers, Joseph McCormick. Under employment, Georgia Eldey, Allison Berline, Shannon Hinsman, Anton Nixon, Daniel Peters, Daniel Mack, Roscoe Brown, Brian Leonard, and under retirement, Nancy Gordon. Start with that.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Russell, second by Mr. Cannon. Any discussion? No discussion.
Mrs. Ressler? Aye. Mr. Canning?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Jones?
Aye.
Mrs. Camworth, aye. Ms. Stearns?
Aye.
And under employment, 10.537, Phil Stearns.
Second.
Mr. Johnson, second by Mr. Canning. Any discussion?
I have a few questions. Just for transparency purposes, obviously, this is your husband. I got a question for you, and then I got a question for a few administrators. Mrs. Stearns, if in fact your husband would receive the votes to become employed at Tinley High School, and if there was a problem or problems concerning his employment that reached a level that it was causing problems, would you have any problems with asking your husband to step aside? Okay, thank you. Dr. Kendall, I'd like to ask you a question on this. In any way, do you feel that you were forced to add this to the agenda? Do you feel you were forced to make a recommendation or in any kind of way?
I was not forced to talk, but I do endorse the recommendation.
Okay.
On his own.
Okay. And I would ask Dr. Goggins the same question as Dr. Kendall.
Same as Dr. Kendall.
Okay. Thank you. That's it.
I believe it's good that we do hire people from our community. This man's a taxpayer. And anytime that we need to reward somebody from our own District 228, then we should be trying to do that. We should be trying to hire from within. It doesn't matter whether or not this person sit on the board. That person will come in and do the job.
I'd just like to add, this is not something I sought out. This came about from conversations with people currently at the district. This is at the football game, one of the staff members at Force was telling me, these are positions that we're not able to fill for the rate and the hours these people are expected to do it. So it's something that needs to be looked at as well.
Well, I know your husband has a very good track record in working in the communities. He was a first responder. I've heard good things about him. So, as long as those things that we just talked about that I brought up, I'm comfortable with that.
I said, I have no problem with it. As long as he does the job, and we have a need, he's willing to do work.
If it does arise that he has to be terminated, it would take 4 of us to say so. Is that correct?
That's the same thing as anybody else.
As any other employee.
So he'll be treated as any other
He'll be
employee
treated as any other employee.
at our school district. So.
Ms. Stearns, are you removing yourself from the vote?
Well, when you call the vote, yell out.
Okay. All right, are we ready? Okay. Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Canning?
With the information that was provided, aye.
Mrs. Jones?
Aye.
Mrs. Camworth? Aye. Mrs. Ressler?
Aye.
Ms. Stearns?
Abstain. Now, motion to move to closed session to consider information regarding the appointment, employment compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees.
So moved.
I'm sorry.
We did one or two.
Okay. I'm gonna look my Ms. Camp second by Ms.
Okay, Mrs. Camworth? Aye. Mrs. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Canning?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Ressler? Aye. Ms. Stearns?
Aye.